Good morning. Welcome to CATEX TV. My name is Frank Fortunato. This is a live broadcast from Princeton, New Jersey. Today is Wednesday, the 22nd of October, 2008. It's 11:30 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time in the U.S., 4:30 p.m. in London, 12:30 p.m. in Bermuda. It's 9:30 a.m. in Mexico City. If you need to reach us during the broadcast, you can phone in toll-free at 1-866-67-CATEX. Overseas, our instant mail address on AOL is CATEX TV. Today in history, in 1962, President John F. Kennedy, in a nationally televised 18-minute address to the American people, announced an air and naval blockade around the island of Cuba following the discovery of Soviet missile bases on the island. It was the closest, knock on wood, the world has come to nuclear war. I have a little bit of an economic update before we begin. The stock market is down about 318 points right now. There's a bevy of economic news. Very little of it seems good. The Argentinian economy seemingly is in a stall mode with the Argentinian default prospect of Argentinian national sovereign bonds. In addition to that, the overnight Asian markets went down as much as 7% on fear of a global recession. And in the United States, as we'll lead with a couple of stories, there's just continuing spates of bad third quarter economic news from a number of companies. On top of all this, of course, is the fear that the credit markets are not going to unfreeze. However, just before we've come on, we've begun to see some stories indicating that there is a thawing, and that's the term that they're using, a thawing in the credit markets, and there may be some increased activity in lending between banks, so hopefully that'll be reflected in the stock market. Either way, it seems as if things are going to be pretty much on hold in this country until the presidential election in 12 days. Speaking of which, in most recent polls that came out this morning, Senator Obama has opened up a 10-point lead over Senator McCain. So we'll keep an eye on that and see how that goes. And now to our main news. Travelers, the Hartford-based U.S. insurance giant, said that third quarter net income has tumbled to $214 million. This is a big drop from about $1.2 billion the year before. This is after the company was hit by about $680 million worth of catastrophe losses. Net income for the first 9 months of this year dropped 34% down to $2.1 billion. This is from last year's figure of $3.58 billion. Operating income for the current quarter was $330 million compared to $1.198 billion last year at this quarter. However, the group's underwriting losses were heavy. For the third quarter alone, Travelers reported a $208 million loss compared to a $500 million gain for the third quarter last year. For the 9 months to end of September for 2008, Travelers reported a 59% drop in underwriting gain, which fell to $531 million from $1.3 billion a year earlier. Travelers also added that it had increased its asbestos reserves, will that never go away, by $70 million more dollars, up from zero the previous quarter. So it looks as if they were hit by the catastrophes, the Ike and Gustav that we've been talking about, and here we go again with more. Platinum Re, the Bermudian reinsurer, reported a third quarter net loss of $45 million compared to net income of $91 million for this time last year. Net income for the first 9 months of the year also fell to just over $154 million from nearly $247 million last year. The combined ratio for the company jumped to 122%, which is a big increase from 81.3% this time last year. Net investment income also dropped to $48 million from $54 million a year earlier. According to Michael Price, the CEO, quote, significant catastrophe activity and the impact of the global financial crisis on our investment portfolio adversely affected our results. He added, however, that he was cautiously optimistic in his outlook for market conditions in the future. Beazley, the Lloyd's insurer, has reported gross written premiums of £595 million for the 9 months ending on September 30th. This is down 1% from a year earlier. Beazley estimates that the impact on net profit from Hurricanes Gustav and Ike will be about 20 million British pounds. Beazley also reported an investment loss of 26 million pounds in the third quarter, derived from mark-to-market losses, It said it expected rates, presumably premium rates, to rise in the coming months. The insurer said in a statement the past 3 months have presented significant investment management challenges, combined with an increase in hurricane-related insurance claims. Core underwriting activity, however, remains robust, and we continue to see healthy growth in the business underwritten by our U.S. operations. We believe the scale of both the underwriting and investment losses incurred by insurers in recent months rank them as market-changing developments. Yes, indeed. Maybe almost close to act of God developments, but nevertheless, they are what they are. Moving over a couple of degrees to the banking sector, Wachovia Corporation in the U.S. said this morning that it lost a stunning $24 billion in the third quarter alone, as it took a massive impairment charge for its acquisition by Wells Fargo. It also added more than $6 billion to its credit loss provisions and reported a total third quarter loss then of $23.9 billion, or over $11 a share. In the same period a year ago, Wachovia posted net income of $1.7 billion, or up 90 cents a share. So it's almost a $12 swing. Excluding impairment and expense, it said its third quarter loss was $4.8 billion. The Charlotte, North Carolina bank said it is on track to close its sale to Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo's chief financial officer said, quote, "We believe it was prudent for Wachovia to put these losses behind them. The asset write-downs, the reserve buildup, and other items are consistent with Wells Fargo's acquisition assumptions." Wachovia said it took an $18.8 billion non-cash goodwill impairment, reflecting declining market valuations and the terms of the merger with Wells Fargo. And who says that labor actions don't hurt? Not Boeing. Boeing, the second largest commercial plane maker and defense contractor, said that profit fell 38% after a strike by machinists halted aircraft deliveries, and that it can't confirm previous profit predictions for 2008. Third quarter net income decreased to $695 million from $1.11 billion a year earlier. Revenue fell 7.4% to $15.3 billion, hurt by the machinist walkout that began on the 6th of September. Deliveries, which determine when Boeing gets paid, dropped 23% last quarter after the 27,000 machinists stopped work in a dispute over job security and compensation. The walkout, now in its 7th week, as well as some supplier delays, cost Boeing 60 cents a share in the third quarter. The strike is also further delaying the new 787 Dreamliner that Boeing is counting on to help it surpass the larger commercial company Airbus. Analysts continue to predict that the walkout will hurt earnings even more next quarter. Boeing CEO Jim McInerney told employees on October 2nd that a global financial crisis had not yet hurt Boeing's daily operations, partly because the company had ample cash. One concern, McInerney said, is whether U.S. military spending, the biggest customer for Boeing, will slow down because of economic rescue packages draining the Treasury's banks. And in England, British Prime Minister Gordon Brown acknowledged for the first time this morning during the questions period in Parliament that the world economic downturn is likely to cause a recession in England. Brown told lawmakers at the weekly question and answer session in the House of Commons that current economic woes were, quote, likely to cause recession. Meanwhile, the Bank of England Governor Mervyn King yesterday warned that Britain was likely entering a recession. The accounting firm Ernst & Young published a report on Monday claiming Britain has been in a recession. And Britain's Office for National Statistics is expected to report formally on Friday that the country is in recession. What does the opposition say? The main opposition Conservative Party leader David Cameron said Brown himself must shoulder some blame for Britain's downturn. And meanwhile, last week we were touting Prime Minister Brown's financial wizardry in being the only Western leader to step up with a clear plan to solve the banking crisis. We still believe in him. Not to be outdone, the Chinese are involved. Chinese President Hu Jintao called President Bush on the phone last night. He told the president, who presumably took the call, that he hoped the American government's move to stabilize